Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host of GSD Presents Silicon Valley and AI in Tech. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 17 startups under my belt. I've been involved in two unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company. Love artificial and quantum computing because, as you know, we are in a state of infobesity and we got to take care of it. I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. So, with that, I have incredible guests today. And yes, one of them is at Columbia University. He's an adjunct professor and chief data scientist and director of analytics at Ames. He's a consultant. He's an author. He's an incredible guy. Kosrow Dehnad, or Kos, is my guest today, and also Joe Duncan. So with that, I'd like to bring the two blockchain crypto gurus that talking about. He wrote a book called, Kos wrote a book called The Complete Guide to Blockchain, an investor manual. With that, I'd like to bring him on board. Hey, guys, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks,
Good.
Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Kos, I got to tell you, you look so sophisticated. I feel like I'm talking to Sigmund Freud. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know. You just threw me back for a second there. I was waiting for a chow chow to come out. And I was going to say, doctor, talk to me.
So lay on the bed first. Let me just take some notes.
Yeah. Lay in the bed first and give me a drink, So you guys, tell me a little bit about it. How in the world, do you go from, you went to University of Manchester, Kos, then you went to University of California for your PhD in statistics. Then you go back for applied statistics. Are you into math or what?
I am kind of I'm about math and statistics, but right now most of my focus is on AI and cryptography and IT and machine learning.
Okay. So, Kos, how do you go from Manchester and your Bachelor of Science in Mathematics? But how do you get to the point where you go to AI? So you did applied statistics, but what fascinated you about AI?
See, the thing about AI is that you can see the impact of what you are doing very immediately, right? And I was at Bell Labs for a while. Fantastic institution. But for example, it is like you building a house. They tell you to drill a hole, and you have no idea what this hole is about. Is it for plumbing? Is it for what? You're just doing things every day and without seeing the whole big picture. What I love about AI and machine learning is that first, it's highly mathematical. You see the impact of what you're doing, and it has application to a lot of facets of our lives, and it can change everything. And actually, one of the things that I've been talking about after I give some introduction is that how we try to use AI and machine learning and cryptocurrency and blockchain to help NGOs and charitable organizations, particularly in developing world, right? And how it can solve a lot of their problems that I will mention and briefly discuss in a high level way how we are trying to.
I love it. Hey, Joe, a few words about you. So, how in the world did you get into cryptography? And, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was a trader on Wall Street in the derivatives area for a number of years. Actually, that's where I met Kosrow way back in the 90s. And then around 2010, I really wanted to make a pivot because of what I saw going on in technology, right? With AI, as you guys talked about, with mobile. I mean, I really saw things changing dramatically all around me, and I didn't want to be left out. So I moved to Singapore. I was there for about 10 years, and I became very involved in the fintech scene there as both an investor and advisor. And it was there that I first got exposed to blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it made a positive impact on me, just in terms of, if we want to talk about the positive impact on people, in that I saw people actually using it, right? Because Singapore is a wealthy country, but the countries around it, for the most part, are not in a lot of ways, not financially anyway. So, people, for example, there's a pretty substantial Filipino expat community in Singapore, and they send remittances back to the Philippines a lot, right, from their jobs there. And they would spend like $200 and cost them $50. Like they use something called Philipay, which is like the equivalent of Western Union. Very expensive, and it's not even, those places get blamed a lot for the cost, but it's really not their fault, because they have to make such an investment in real estate, for example, like the Western Unions of the world. So I saw them using Bitcoin and Ethereum, the ones at least in the developer community that I was exposed to, and they would send those amounts, or basically any amount they wanted, for just a couple dollars, or sometimes even less than $1 at the time, when those networks were less busy than they are now. So that made quite a positive impact on me. Like, in the Philippines, for example, I think only a third of households has a bank account. So it's not something like in America you can really relate to unless you see it firsthand. And then after a while, I began the trading side of it, and I did some arbitrage trades. Arbitrage usually means being long can often mean being long on one exchange and short on a different one, right? So the long side in Bitcoin was just the Bitcoin mainnet. And when I was going through the trying to put a risk value on the counterparty of holding something long on the Bitcoin mainnet, I couldn't really come up with anything other than essentially a zero for my counterparty risk, something we'd relate to the CME, in Chicago, like the greatest futures exchange ever. And so that's when it made a powerful impact on me as a trader, where I was like, well, if I, this is something really different than anything else I've looked at or heard about. And I really got to understand this, the math, the software, the game theory that Satoshi used to make it all work. So those were kind of the two profound moments. One was, seeing it work and helping people. And then the other was the trading aspect of it. And, from there, I started blogging about it. I was asked to speak at some keynotes, and just kind of took off, and, haven't really looked back. And a couple of years ago, I relocated back to the US into New York for family reasons. And Kosrow and I reconnected again at that time. We published the book together, the Blockchain Investor Manual, and then we also co-teach at Columbia course on blockchain investing.
No, that's fantastic. Hey, who's Satoshi? I want to know who this person is.
Nobody knows.
I mean, but there's got to be somebody out there that's Satoshi. You know what I mean? Are we going to have that person pop up sometime, male or female or whatever? I mean, it's just interesting, because I hear about him or her all the time. But
I think Elon Musk thinks he's Mike Zbao, something like that.
Sabo? No. Is that who he said? Right. Actually, Kosrow, I think you had some interesting comments a while back on that. Is that maybe it's somebody who worked in one of the intelligence agencies, like an NSA or M5 or something like that, because, they have the cryptography background. They understand the government institutions. Probably they're not going to reveal who they are, and they're quite good at kind of keeping their anonymity. And they have good jobs. they don't really have to leave it. Right? They're doing well, and they probably have really strict NDA agreements that they wouldn't, want some of this information to come out who they are. So I thought that was kind of an interesting angle.
But it's interesting, it could be a great movie, with the real Satoshis. Please stand up.
Yeah. Seems like we may never know who it is at this point. But
it's incredible. So let's talk about, what's happening in terms of, so if you look at it, where we are with Bitcoin, where we are with Ethereum, where how the world's changing, and you see the ups and downs, the spikes up and down on Ethereum and Bitcoin. Of course, it's trending up, of course, from what it was a few years ago. But
right.
What the heck is going on? Why is it up and down so much?
Okay. The whole thing is that essentially at this time, one reason is that, you see, what is the use of money? Either it's a medium of exchange, you buy things with it, or it's a store of value. You save money such that later in life, when your money generating power is not as well as where you were young, you can have the same standard of living. Or something to essentially keep track of what a ledger. If two countries are buying and selling oil and wheat, they have to record it. They record it in some currency, right? Now, for something to be the medium of exchange, right, you need certain properties, right? And Bitcoin at this time, it doesn't have that property, because it takes roughly 10 minutes for the whole thing to be get mined, right? Exactly. So, for example, you don't want to go to a Starbucks and you have to wait for 10 minutes for the block to be mined, so you can have your copy, right?
Right.
Then also we go a store of value. Store of value, essentially, store of value. Suppose you save money, and when you retire, you don't want to say, "Wow, I saved $1 million, and I worth $500,000." So things that are very volatile cannot be a store of money, the value, right? So at this time, Bitcoin cannot be a store of value. I don't say it won't be, but it cannot. At this time, it's very similar from my point of view. It's very similar to antiques and works of art, etc. Because of that, its value just goes up and down based on supply and demand in the market.
Well, but there's so many people talking about it. Invest in Bitcoin. Do that now. Look how much money I made. You see the war. You were talking about wheat and oil. I mean, in terms of where Russia and Ukraine and all this these challenges we have in the planet's Earth, you would think that more Bitcoin and Ethereum would be used, right, to be able to transfer the value around. But you're right about it. It's up and down so much. It could be 65 and it could go down to 22. You know what I mean? It's like it's like a Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, I think that over the past couple of years, as it's found itself into more institutional portfolios, it's behaving more like a growth stock now. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and Kosrow Dehnad actually published some research on this in January, just showing how sensitive it is to interest rates, for example. Now, a few years ago, when it was mostly in retail hands or early adopters' hands, I think the spikes were more driven by the lack of liquidity. All right. It just wasn't in that many deep portfolios who would trade it very actively. But now the volatility is coming from a different source. It's behaving much more like a growth stock.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But the other problem is it costs a hell of a lot to trade it. You know what I mean? It's if you use Coinbase and some of those platforms, it's not cheap to go. I mean, it's not like you can trade a stock, right? It costs a lot of money, and we're going to have to come up with some alternative ways that are easy to use to be able to drive. I'm sure it's going to happen in the not too distant future, but it's interesting, right?
Exactly. That's why, because of the wide bid-ask spread, it's more like work of art and things like this. And also one of the things that people use and usually say is that, see, it's not correlated with other asset classes, so you can use it for diversification. But what they forget is that if major institutional investors start investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptocurrency, then it becomes correlated with other asset classes. To give you an example, actually, I remember during the long-term capital. See, if you are a big holder of two assets, the very fact that you hold those two assets, they are correlated, no matter what the mathematics is. Because you have a margin call, you start to sell this asset, and after a while, there's no bid, you start to sell the other one. That's for the first time we saw it during the long-term capital. Essentially, theoretically, bonds and equities are negatively correlated. But they had margin calls, they sold the equity. After a while, they had to sell the bonds. And for the first time, we saw that these two things are correlated because there are major holders of both assets, right?
Got it.
And at this time, most of the people who are in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, excuse my language, they are geeky guys. You're sincerely one of them. But later on,
we're all in the club.
Okay, but later on, when major institutions come, you'll see the correlation. And essentially, these diversification things will.
So you're saying it's going to stabilize once we start to see those correlations, right?
Exactly, because there will be more players and more bid-ask spreads.
No, I agree. So let's talk about what's going on with the blockchain. And, I know that you did the complete guide to blockchain, but also hear about quantum computing and the challenges. You got systems that are 100 million times faster than a supercomputer. What would take 10,000 years in a supercomputer at a slow quantum computer level will take 200 seconds. So is the blockchain really that secure? I mean, because we're going to be able, with these nefarious folks that are out there, to be able to disrupt it. And it's even crypto secure, right, in terms of the market. So what do you think?
By the way, Joe. By the way, Joe and I, we don't agree with everything, because if we had agreed with everything, none of them would be needed. So
Yeah.
he can give his view, and I can give also my
Sure. Whichever one of you guys want to go first.
conspiracy theory view. And also, we wrote an article called "It Could Go to Zero," and one of them talks about exactly what you are talking about, and I elaborate on it after. I don't want to turn a dialogue into a monologue. So I let Joe talk about it.
No, go ahead, Kosrow. Let's have you talk.
Okay,
first.
you know what? He mentioned that somebody in the in NSA or something might know the whole thing. You know what? Let me remind you, some of your viewers that are very young. See, Enigma was a coding machine for Germany, right? And the British and also Turing, they broke it. But even after the war, they didn't reveal it, that they know the code, how to break it. Right? The same thing here. I would think there is at least 5% chance that all these hash functions, all these cryptography that we are using, NSA has a backdoor to it. And perhaps this guy that Joe says is the Satoshi, right? They have the backdoor. And if the computing power goes up, right? All these things that we think is going to take 100 years, essentially, what is impossible in cyberspace? In cyberspace, everybody who's watching this, they know, at the end of the day, we are calculating. That's the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. All these hocus pocus is calculation. So what is impossible in cyberspace? If I tell you, you know what, Gary, I have a problem. I can tell you what the solution to it is. It's like Hanoi Towers. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take you 1,000 years, given the computing power that we have right now, to solve it. You'll say, Kosrow, for all practical purposes, it's impossible, right? I'm not going to live for 1,000 years. So these impossibilities, so if something can be calculated much faster, it's not impossible anymore. So all these hash functions, etc., that they use in Bitcoin, and also the hash of one block goes to the other one, they are essentially impossible to manipulate the whole thing, because it takes a long time. But if you have got quantum computing, theoretically, you can do it. And it's not immutable record. With this one, as my daughter says, Dad, get off the soapbox. Let me get off the soapbox. And by the way, I want to also use, if there's time, I need 5 minutes to talk about how to use crypto to help NGOs and charities. Whenever you are done, I don't want the show to finish without me talking about it.
I mean, the one thing I'd say is speaking of Satoshi, he did comment on quantum computing. So it's not like he was ignorant of the fact that, yes, if quantum computing ever developed to that level, that sure, you could break the cryptography, and he was totally aware that all cryptography is ultimately broken too. And what he did say is, if something like that were on the horizon, that they'd have enough advanced knowledge of it that they could all agree on a new cryptography or new encryption techniques they could use there going forward, to replace the old one. And that was the defense that he talked about anyways, that there'd be enough time to realize it and then change how Bitcoin is configured to address it that way.
No, that's interesting. So let's go down through. Let's talk about the blockchain, and let's talk about NGOs, and what do we have to do differently? How is this going to help? Where it can be used? Where is it used today? And what we can do to really impact it and make the world a better place through democratization of opportunity.
Yeah, let me go first, and then Kosrow can talk after. So what's going on now, and I think it'd be very resonate very much with your community too, the tech community and the startups, is that there's a build out now going on in the blockchain space, much like there was in the 90s for the internet space, right? So things didn't take off as much in the 90s as they started to after the year 2000, right? I mean, you had Amazon, in the 90s, and you had eBay and stuff like that. But, but other than Amazon, I think probably the biggest winners all came out after that, after the major infrastructure was built.
Well, they didn't know they were winners either, Joe. I remember in 1998 when I started one of the first e-commerce consulting companies. I never forget, people said Amazon's just for books. Nobody's going to put their credit card online. And and model
Right.
how the world has changed. So
Right.
we're kind of like the dawn of a new era, right?
Yeah, totally. Now, Amazon's an interesting case in point because the internet was supposed to be this liberating technology that was going to be decentralized and flatten everything out and give everybody a chance and get rid of these monopolies, right? Well, that's not happened with Amazon, right? It didn't happen with a lot of the social media networks and search engines and YouTube and these things. They've become and arguably more monopolistic than the things they've replaced, right? Because they build these data moats around them, and once you get eyeballs, they're very sticky to make them go to a different platform. Like Amazon, I was reading, has more than 40% of the e-commerce share in the US right now. It's probably more market share than the Kmart's and Sears and those companies that Amazon, their business model basically crushed beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that's intriguing to people about the blockchain built out is now there's a chance maybe to get away from that. Maybe by the protocol itself being able to take the place of these centralized corporate entities in a lot of cases. Now, we can give the smaller players a chance, and have a more decentralized looking macro environment as well, right? So, we're not sort of captive to just going through these monopolies that are sitting in the middle. And, so that's the kind of infrastructure you're seeing get built out to basically do just that, right? And I think the people who get it are understanding that, we've got to adapt to this, or we want to be on the side that's promoting the disintermediation, or we're going to be completely disintermediated and have no hand in what's going on. So, like if you look at Sotheby's here in New York, for example, they got behind NFTs, just in the last couple of years. Now they're a leader of that. I mean, they're the ones I think who were involved in the Beeple art sale last year, the NFT for $70 million. So the forward-looking established players, you see them kind of one by one now getting aligned and realizing, that they have to do. I mean, I think it was either this morning or yesterday that Facebook announced now they're going to be getting into that space as well and accepting tokens and metaverse and those kind of things. Now, I don't think all these things are going to work out, but I do think that, institutions are going to have to try anyways, because it's quite impactful and in terms of, redoing business models. And then for startups, the thing to do is think about where they can play in those universes too. Are they going to be something more familiar, like an infrastructure play? Are they going to be something more pervasive and say, look, the competitive landscape's totally changing. There's a vacancy here, and we're going to aim to fill it, like a decentralized social media platform, for example.
What do you see? I mean, how long is it going to take till we get through this process of really, this maturation of the blockchain and more wider acceptance and crypto? I mean, what do you think? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20? Is it where are we with it today?
If you look at the growth curves of blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you want to just look at the two, I mean, it's not gonna be long because they're growing faster than the internet was. I think I'd say double the acceptance and adoption rates of where the internet is. So there's just so much talent and money going into blockchain right now. As George Soros said, the market doesn't predict the future, as we're taught in business school. The market creates the future, right? So the future will be where the money is going, right? And right now, every day you open the newspaper and there's a new $1 billion fund being committed to investing in blockchain, and institutions that just a couple of years ago were calling Bitcoin a joke, like JP Morgan, now are basically, more optimistic forecasts than, even the people in the space 2 years ago were making about the future of these things.
So what happens? So let's paint a picture, right? So each one of us, you guys are way smarter than I'll ever be. I'm just a country boy, but I know we all have the problem of infobesity, right? In your own personal cloud, you've got about 300,000 items. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You, Joe, have more information in your own personal cloud, the entire web. The problem is it's the same trajectory. It's doubling every year. So in 5 years, you're going to have 10 million items with the Internet of Things. We're in a state of infobesity, right? We got a lot of information out there. How in the world, in our own personal clouds, are we going to think about it? In the last 2 weeks, how many times has somebody said, I sent you an email message, Joe, did you get it? Where did you send it? I sent it to your Columbia email. No, I sent it to your Google account. And you're saying, well, when did you send it? I sent it a week ago. Will you send it again? I can't find it. When are we going to get to a point? I mean, we're inundated. So is not the data really the critical part here for all of us across the board, and understanding what that data really means and how it can help us? and or either as individuals or companies. So what do you guys think about that?
So exactly what you're saying is that, you see, before it was information, now is meta information, information about information. And at
Mhm.
this time, people should work exactly as what you said, information about information. Where are these things? And this machine learning and AI can go a long way to do this. Essentially, they can look at your behavior, etc. Say you have got 20 emails. Do you know what I'm saying? How often do you look at something? And also something that if there's a one email comes that is totally, his profile is different from the other one, first they should send it that to you. Do you know what I'm saying? So meta information becomes important. And also essentially all these, where we are heading, we can fit an S curve and roughly estimate how fast the whole thing is going, right? Exactly. So what I think is that what's going to be important is the meta information, coming up with technology that gives us information about information.
So
Secondary
what?
version.
So what do you guys think about this? So let's put it out there. I had a chance to talk to that Sophia, the robot, right? And one of the things that we've worked on, and I've worked on several of these projects, are technologies unsupervised and semi-supervised AI. But
Learning,
here's the
right?
concern. Elon Musk says the same thing, that we got to be really careful because, when you have pragmatic systems that look at us as like maybe we're not good, right? We do bad things to each other. We don't treat each other the right way. We ruin the planet. If you're looking at it from the outside, I would say they're useless, right? So building compassion and empathy into the systems to be able to help us, wherever we are and whatever we do is going to be more and more critically important. I say it's kind of like having your grandmother. My grandmother loved me no matter what. She was unconditional love, no matter what I did, and she was always proud. Isn't it going to be to a point where we better start taking, no matter what, the blockchain, whether it's crypto, whether it's artificial intelligence, as a horizontal, not a vertical, right? And build some different kind of sub pieces into it: compassion, empathy, caring, those kind of things? Or does it not matter? I mean, it's because we're at that point, right? We're in an inflection point where we better start to think about it, because while these systems, look at the drones that are flying, they can go out and attack on their own now, and they can swarm, right? So what do we do to make this world a better place? Because we're democratizing opportunities, but we're also creating a whole different kind of world, right?
Right. I think the final answer is going to come from network. Essentially, we are going to network. And what does the network believe that this is good, right? Either through voting or whatever it is. And slowly, if this network expands and includes everybody, almost everybody, more or less, we're going to have some common understanding that this is good and this is bad, right?
Right.
So essentially, expansion of
Well, I
network, I
hope
think.
so, Kaz. I hope so, because if you look at the planet today, I'm not sure we have that. Honestly, you know what I mean. I'm not sure what's good for you and me, maybe, and Joe, maybe not good for somebody else, right?
Right.
I don't know how we come up with who makes a decision what's good and bad. I don't know. I don't
The
know what the
network,
answer
the
is.
network.
Perplexing.
Perhaps that's a good time for me to segue into this NGO. What do you think
Let's
about
talk.
this?
Let's go right down. Let's get into it.
Is that okay, Joe? Is
Oh,
that all right
totally.
with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
perfect timing.
You see, when I say using cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., to help NGOs and charities, everybody says it's an oxymoron, because till now most of the association of cryptos have been associated with either pure speculation or ransom or money laundering, right? I
Oh, yeah.
understand that point, but people should realize that this is the byproduct of technology. Technology by itself is amoral, and it's up to us how we use it. Very similar to nuclear energy. We can make bombs or we can make electricity, right? With this introduction, let's see what are the major issues. And by the way, what piqued my interest are 3 or 4 incidences, but at this time, if there was time, I'll talk about it. Otherwise, let me just continue. What are the 3 or 4 major issues that NGOs and charities and donors are facing? For NGOs and charities, particularly in developing countries, accessing donors can become very expensive, and sometimes 50 cents a dollar, even less than that, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, I've seen it. If an NGO is very successful, then the local government in third world country or developing country start to interfere in their finances, because this shows either inefficiencies in the government or corruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about donors. First, the donors want to make sure everything is
both, or both, Oz, or both, inefficiencies and corruption. You know what I mean? It's not. It can not only be or, it can be and, right?
And good point. Exactly. Actually, the case that piqued my interest was both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, donors want to make sure that whatever they donate, what the counterparty is legit, right? And the money is spent properly, right? And also, these days, for a number of reasons, a lot of people don't want their donation to be anonymous, and I can understand it. Suppose there's a Russian guy who really wants to donate to the relief fund for the women and children of Ukraine. Can you imagine the political challenge that he's facing? What is going to happen to him?
Mm-hmm.
Now, with this introduction, let me just make one point, and then I just wrap the whole thing up. At this time, because of smart contracts, if you have Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can lend it, right, without any credit risk. In other words, you're sure that your principal won't be lost, right? Very similar to money market and CDS, and get the interest deposited to your wallet, right? So here is the general design we are working on. You see, there is a network of donors, very similar to the network of Bitcoin, that if you want to transfer Bitcoin, you put the trade in. Now, this network propagates the information. There is an NGO that needs money. They go to a node on their own. At least one guy in the third world has a mobile phone, right? They input their request, and the network propagates, and people vote on it, very similar to mining, right? And based on that, the network decides how they're going to send the money, which is the interest on your principal. So the principal will be always there. So these, how frequently, it can be daily. So the government knows if they start to interfere, they're going to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg, right? And finally, people who are locally there, they can get paid 1 or 2 satoshis or whatever it is to have an eye on the NGOs, and NGOs will be required to send their performance. That's going to go to a blockchain. And also we can use natural language processing, NLP, right, to see whether they are doing well or not, and decide whether we're going to continue with it, increase it, decrease it. And people can come into this network and leave this network, right? So with this one, let me finish this. We are trying to do good. I used to trade some time ago in Saudi Arabia, and this is what I heard a lot. They say some Westerners came to the kingdom to do good, and they did very well. So we are going to try to do good, and hopefully we'll also do very well. And if you're interested in this project, I recommend that you just contact Joanne or I, and we'll be happy to let you in. So with this one, let me get off the soapbox.
No, that's great. Joe, do you have any comments?
Yeah, sure. Just to summarize them, right, in terms of the the benefits we can think of with as Satoshi spelled out for Bitcoin, right? Just the ability to seamlessly onboard and censorship resistant. I mean, no one could stop you from sending it from one wallet to the other. And the other thing, as it relates to the NGOs is that it's something that's really not appreciated enough when it comes to Bitcoin. If anything, the understanding is the opposite of the truth, is that the track record of the transactions, it's quite transparent, and it's there on the blockchain, and it doesn't go away. So one of the things, if you have a monetary system that you need, that probably isn't talked about enough, is you need a way to audit it, right? You need to know where all the cash flows are. You need to know the coins in circulation, something we can't do a good job at in our current fiat system. Whereas in something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's immaculate, and those records don't go away. So in the case of auditing it for like the NGO, I mean, those records are very clear and they're transparent, and there's almost no cost to accessing those records. The data is, you don't really have to cleanse it or do anything to it, because that's what the miners are doing every 10 minutes on Bitcoin. They're making sure that the records are all accurate before they commit it to the blockchain. And it's there in the cloud whenever you want to access it. So I think that in the inefficiencies Kosrow was talking about, we said sometimes even less than 50% of the contributions go to the charity itself. Here we don't have that problem because we'll see it. And a lot of times you'll hear these stories about an exchange got hacked and this and that, and that's bad. And nobody with the hackers wants that kind of thing. But a lot of times it's not like an agency that came in and was hired to go and find the hackers that found it. A lot of times it's actually the people who are using those exchanges, the traders, and the people using them for wallets, that because of the blockchain being transparent, it's like they perform kind of a crowd auditing or crowd forensic work. That they more often find the hackers, than like an agency that's come in and tried to look for it. And I can imagine in the case of the NGOs in the charity space, that drive to do that is that much more, that much more strong, right? That if something is going wrong, to go in there and do it. And with the blockchain being open and transparent, it gives everybody the capacity to do their own audit on it.
No, it sounds great. Listen, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so closing comments, and how do people get a hold of you guys?
I think, Joe, I think the best thing is the LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I started blogging on LinkedIn when I was in Singapore, so that's just kind of the legacy of where I go. So Kosrow's on there too, so you can go and read our stuff there. It's probably more on my LinkedIn in terms of the research we've been putting out, just because I've been doing a lot longer. But both of us, you can message and reach us there. We also, in collaboration with a crypto news service out of Hong Kong called Forecast, we published some articles with them as well. Last month we had one on the relationship of the market cap between Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example. And that was a well-received article, and people can trade around those kind of things.
We can also send to Dehnad at IEEE.org. Dehnad IEEE. By the way, since your wife is half Ukrainian, one of the things that piqued my interest in this donation was that there is a group, there is a small group in army of Ukraine. They are called Aerorozvitka. They are on quad bike and with some drone. They have been super effective, and they are asking for donation, right? And I said, my gosh, how can we do it quickly? If this was set up and running, they could they put their request. 3 or 4 people in Ukraine says, yes, these guys are legit.
Well, you might be getting some context, guys.
Okay, and exactly. Say, okay, the interest for one day of everybody in this charity note should go to them, and we just see how they do. Okay, very good, Gary. Really, thank you very much. Your program is really good, and I really appreciate the time that you gave us.
We'll have to do a part 2 of this thing, guys. Listen, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on my show, GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And to all my audience out there, I want you to be safe, happy, and healthy. And, say a prayer for our friends in the Ukraine. They need it today, and they're incredible people. Love you all.
Absolutely.
I look forward to seeing you guys again, and stay tuned.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having us. Enjoyed it.